Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Ant wins gold. Rudy wins silver. Olympic reaction. And is this the final year of Naz Reid in Minnesota? All that and more on the Minnesota Basketball Party.
This is Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Timberwolves talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Basketball Party on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Wolves talk every Wednesday here on the Minnesota Basketball Party, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Wolves with Ben Beecken. He produces great daily Wolves content wherever you get your podcasts. That's where you hear the audio of this show, the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. You'll meet the crew in a second. Today's show will highlight the Olympic run of Anthony Edwards and Team USA with a thrilling semifinal and final to win gold over Rudy Gobert and France. Also, speaking of France, is Wemby going to make the Spurs a problem for the Wolves in the Western Conference this year? We'll touch on that. And the question of the day, is Naz Reid entering his final year as a Timberwolf? That and plenty more on today's Minnesota Basketball Party, which is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more, and this summer you can get a boost or bonus daily. All customers get a boost or bonus daily. Without a lot of sports going on, you got Major League Baseball, WNBA is starting back up. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long, even though the sports aren't quite sportsing the way that we want them to. FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we've laid out the topics. Let's meet our panel today with the opening tip.
I'm Jack Borman, co-host of the Locked On Wolves postcast with my man Luke Inman. I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think Anthony Edwards showed in Paris kind of exactly what you want to see from a guy leading your NBA franchise.
I'm Ben Beecken, host of the daily Wolves podcast, Locked On Wolves, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Ant as the face, potentially, of the Olympics moving forward, to Team USA's Olympics team moving forward when we get to LA in 2028.
I'm Reggie Wilson, sports director at Care 11. We got Christmas games, NBA opening night. Anthony Edwards is here to stay. What would he say? Believe that.
And I'm Ron Johnson, Gophers Hall of Famer, former wide receiver. And I'm going to talk about why I think J.J. McCarthy should row the boat. But also, I'm going to talk about why Anthony Edwards likes croissants.
And I'm Sam Ekstrom, executive producer here at Locked On Sports Minnesota, launching us into the gold medal game conversation. Now, as this was going on, we were watching J.J. McCarthy tear it up on the field and apparently tearing a meniscus in the process. But I was a little distracted going in and out, Vikings gold medal game, had it on my phone, had the double screens going on. We didn't get the high dosage of Anthony Edwards that we maybe expected. I think the conversation throughout the exhibition portion of the schedule, maybe going into the Olympics, was, is Ant the alpha? Is Ant going to be taking final shots? And in retrospect, maybe we look a little foolish in saying that after you see what LeBron and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry accomplished in France. Ant, though, very much a contributor, very much a sixth or seventh man coming in, giving a spark, hitting some big threes, some big plays for Team USA. Jack Borman, I'll let you take it from there. Ant wins gold as part of a monumental performance from Team USA's elderly stars, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant.
Yeah, and I think for those three, it started in that semifinal game. And that semifinal game is one of the greatest basketball games I've ever seen. I will remember that flip that the switch that they flipped in the fourth quarter for the rest of my life. To see all of them turn it up to 10 at the same time was incredible. I think outside of the Game 6 closeout win in Boston in 2022, I think that was the best performance of Steph Curry's entire career. Given the stakes and all that, and he parlayed that right into the gold medal game, right? He reminded everybody that he is still the greatest show in sports. I think when he has it going, 4 threes in the final 247, the final 2 games for Steph Curry, 60 points on 17 of 26 from 3. But with Ant specifically, I think My favorite thing about what Ant was able to accomplish is that, it wasn't necessarily that he led the team in scoring, despite averaging, the 7th or 8th most minutes up until that semifinal game. And then I think Devin Booker ended up passing him. But, he kind of went on this like bucket list run, right? You catch a lob from LeBron, you catch a lob from KD. You see how legitimately giddy he is to be around all of these guys, and how all of these guys that he's looking up to were just, ready to die laughing at anything that he said. And I think it's so clear that his peers respect his talent on the floor and his mentality that he plays with, but really gravitate towards him because of who he is and his personality and his authenticity. And I just think like, having someone with that much charisma and that much personality mixed with how talented and special of a basketball player he is, I think Timberwolves fans should be really fortunate, because I know that obviously we had Kevin Garnett, a long time ago, but outside of that, it's really, really tough to have a guy that is the cornerstone of your franchise, that is good enough to be the cornerstone of your franchise on the floor, but also has everything you want off of it to help elevate your team to a place like Reg is saying, where you're starting to get all this national respect. So I just think that, it was a reinforcement that Ant is everything you could want in a number one guy. And I think too, like, people can't forget about his defense. Like there were probably 4 or 5 possessions where he made Evan Fournier just freak out and lose the ball because he decided to get down in a stance and kind of channel that slap the floor and slide your feet energy. And it's just fun to see him embrace that when, it's a game, like you said, Sam, where his offense didn't necessarily pop. There wasn't as many opportunities for him to, get his shots off. And he found a way to impact the game in other ways. And, it was just really fun to watch him alongside KD and Anthony Davis in that second unit for the entirety of this Olympic run. And it'll be really fun to see where Anthony Edwards goes from here, not only as an NBA player, but as an international player as well.
I mean, it does feel like just amongst the social dynamic of the team, he fit in perfectly with the 3 alphas. Like Steph is doing selfie videos with Ant. He's got a secret handshake with KD. LeBron's giving him crap because he doesn't know how to do the champagne. Like that, he fit right in with that group, which is really cool to see. And they seem to genuinely enjoy him being around him. And it's already fueled his KD going to Minnesota rumors. But Ben, you were going to talk about Ant going forward in the 2028 games. And obviously, Team USA pipeline is stacked behind LeBron, behind KD, behind Steph Curry. You could have assembled a gold medal team that didn't even make this roster. But you think that he could be probably one of those lead dogs going forward in 4 years?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at the guys who we already mentioned that kind of came through and carried the team, in the semis and in the gold medal game, Durant, Steph, LeBron. Obviously, LeBron's going to be too old to be on the team. Durant will be too old to be on the team, more likely than not. And very likely Steph is in the same boat. So you look at guys moving forward. I mean, Devin Booker is, and maybe Jason Tatum, maybe Bam Adebayo, but he's not going to be your primary scorer. And so, like, those are probably the only guys that would carry forward to the next Olympics. And yeah, it's possible somebody else emerges. People are already talking about Cooper Flag, which feels really aggressive, because think about where Ant was 4 years ago. Like 4 years ago, I don't think anyone would have said Ant will be on the 2024 team because he was about to be drafted. Like 4 years ago for right now, he hadn't even been drafted yet. So it was a surprise he's on the team, period. And he's still not like the leader of the team this year, right? He played a very important role off the bench. We talked about, Jack mentioned his defense, which I think was the biggest key, especially in the gold medal game, to what he was able to provide outside of the outburst. I think it was against Puerto Rico when he had the 26 points. So all that to say, like, I think, yeah, he's the most likely, given age, given talent level, given the position he plays and the role he's likely going to be asked to play. He's the most likely to be the lead dog of the 2028 Olympic team in LA. There's a handful of other guys, like in terms of bigs, like it's pretty unlikely Embiid's on the team, Anthony Davis. So probably Chet Holmgren's on that team, looking out 4 years. Maybe Jaren Jackson Jr., who played in FIBA last year. Because that's the other thing, is you look at all the guys from the World Cup team last year, and I think that's where some of us got ahead of ourselves, thinking like, oh, Ant's going to be a go-to guy at these Olympics. Well, LeBron and KD and Steph proved that they're not over the hill yet for international competition. LeBron may be the most surprising of all of them to make people pause and say, wait a minute, maybe he is still a top 10 player in the NBA, which is a whole other conversation. But like, some of the guys for the FIBA World Cup team last year, there's a chance they're on the team in 4 years. So you look down those names, and Ant was the lead dog last year for that team, for the FIBA World Cup team that won bronze. So, or finished fourth, I guess. But yeah, I think he's the most likely candidate to lead that team into the 2028 Olympics. There's a handful of other Americans that'll be in their late 20s, early 30s. Tatum, mentioned Jared Jackson, De'Aaron Fox is on that list. Jaylen Brown, who knows, after he was kind of snubbed this time around. But Ant is the guy, I think, moving forward. And he proved that he would be a good teammate, play a role, play the defensive role, be okay with only scoring 8 points in the gold medal game and only playing 9 minutes, tied for the least minutes of anybody that got in the game for Team USA. He was the happy soldier who did play an important role. He's going to be rewarded in 4 years with, hey, you lead the way. And I think he's got the talent and as we've talked about, the charisma, the ability as a leader to do just that.
Reg, do you think Ant raised his national profile very much in these games, or do you think it kind of hovered where it was before? I know that the national TV games are coming either way, that we already have seen the schedule leaks and what it means for the Timberwolves exposure. But what do you think this tournament did for Ant on a national level? Do you think it really moved the meter?
Well, Ant raised the national profile of the Wolves when they beat the Nuggets in the playoffs. I think that was a huge moment for him in his career and a huge moment just for the Timberwolves in general. And I think this only helps that. You mentioned how LeBron, joked with him like, hey, I know you're not used to this, but I think this is something that probably is going to fuel him to try to get used to it. Like, I don't even think Anthony Edwards drinks, so he didn't even know what to do with that champagne bottle. Like, he's like, okay, like, we popping it. How's this happening? But I think that is a motivator for him. Like, he's experienced what winning something meaningful feels like. And I think this is only going to fuel him moving forward to try to get to that mountaintop in the NBA. And it's really cool to just see how, you guys talked about it, but like the guys kind of embraced him as like little bro. Like he was their little brother during this Olympic journey, like that fun little brother that you just enjoy being around because you never know what he's gonna say. He's a interesting dude. And as far as skill set, he's a wildly talented guy. And I think he had the right mindset. Like, I'm the number one option. Maybe that was a little crazy to think now, looking back and seeing how much of a role that, Steph, KD, and LeBron played in closing out these games. But you want him to have that type of an attitude. And to Ben's point, that is going to propel him to probably the top of the next Olympics team, because you're going to be looking for someone who can be that alpha in the absence of guys who you've just kind of grown accustomed to seeing in those Olympic games, like not having a LeBron, even though KD said he wants to, be there in LA. You just don't know at 39 years old, like, is he going to be available? Anthony Davis said that he wants to play in LA in 2028. He's 31 right now. You're looking at him being 35 and all the injuries that he has mounting up. Like, this will be Anthony Edwards' team. I think, Tyrese Halliburton not really getting a lot of minutes. I loved his tweet afterwards where he was just like, when you don't do anything on the group project but still getting A, he's holding up his gold medal. Like, I'm sure he's going to want to be a little bit more involved in the next Olympics as well, and he'll get that opportunity. But Ant is going to be that first option, and I think that's going to – the momentum there. He had the momentum last year coming off FIBA. He said he doesn't want to be involved with FIBA anymore. He wants to do the Olympics moving forward. And I think that this puts him in a position to be that alpha guy. He's been around greatness. He knows what it looks like, having trained and played alongside some of the best in the world for the last, 3-4 weeks. And I think that's only going to help him as he transitions back to the Timberwolves and really tries to reach new heights with them.
And Ron Johnson said that Anthony Edwards loves croissants. Pay off the tease. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if you just look at everything that happened down there, the amount of fun he had. I don't know if you guys saw the meme where it says when mom tells you to bring your little brother, so you got to bring your little brother with KD walking, and then Ant literally walks up with like bright shorts on, looks legit like a little brother to the 7-foot KD. You could just tell he was enjoying his time down there. I was going to do the Kanye thing, but I'm not going to do that when Reggie knows that song. But I know they joked about that, about Kanye saw the future when him and Jay-Z came up with their song, because they really was in Paris. And so when you think about where the team is as a whole, well, Jack gets it. When you see the team as a whole, I think with Anthony Edwards, here's the thing. He raised his stock 100%. On a national level, people know who he is. But he also showed that he understands greatness. He knew Steph had to take over. He knew KD should be the guy. Even though as a competitor, he beat them head to head. And yeah, we all thought that early on. And early on, he was giving it to him. But at the end of the day, he also respects his elders. He also respects those guys. He said he grew up idolizing a lot of those guys and watching those guys play. And so he let the moment be what the moment was, which is this is Steph's moment. This was LeBron's moment. This was KD's moment. And I think that was the key to all of this is like he understood that. In 2028, I do think KD might come back just because like he'll only be like 39 or 40, where that's right where LeBron is now. So I could see KD coming back. I think Steph is probably done and LeBron for sure, but you never know with LeBron. He might try to play just to get Bronny on the Olympic team. Who knows? But I can easily see, and I love the meme. I don't know if you guys saw this one too, of Baby Boy with Tyrese when the dude takes the gun from Tyrese. They were like, this is gonna be Grant Hill trying to help Ja Morant get into the Olympics in 2028. And so I think we forget how great Ja is. Ja on the national stage. He's in LA, so he can travel with his gun. So I get that he doesn't have to go international, so he doesn't need to get rid of the gun. But Ja and Anthony Edwards on the same floor. That right there is electric. And I think that's the goal for 2028. If you can get in the next couple of years, Ja Morant gets rehabilitated. He stops doing stupid stuff. The NBA, he's fine. I think he makes the Olympic team. I mean, we could say we jumped the gun a little bit. I think Cooper Flagg is a one and done. I think Cooper Flagg is probably on that Olympic team. In 3 years in the NBA at 6'9", he's a distributor, a scorer, and a shooter. I feel like he will be up there. I think he's a Porzingis with better ball. Like he has a better ball. He has a better skill. He's stronger. I could see him on that team. But I think Anthony Edwards and Ja Morant will be the leaders on the Olympic team. But Anthony Edwards is the returning lead dog. You'll still have Devin Booker. I think Tyrese Halliburton said he wants to come back because he's not happy with his A, that he didn't do anything to deserve it, but he got it anyway. So I can see Tyrese Halliburton coming back. And then I think Jason Tatum becomes a big part of that team moving forward too. I think Jason Tatum, Anthony Edwards, and Ja Morant, that can be a team to go over in 2028 and definitely win a gold medal.
And congrats to Rudy Gobert, by the way, for the silver with France. Although it was a weird Olympic tournament for Rudy. He again had the finger injury. He didn't play that much and really got overshadowed in a big way by Victor Wembanyama, who in the gold medal game, 26 points, 7 rebounds, 11 of 19 shooting. Wasn't always pretty for Victor, kind of like his regular season. It wasn't always scintillating, but what he showed defensively, with his alien-like reach, the photo of him trying to block Steph Curry's shot is otherworldly, and his ability to make plays around the rim with his long arms. He's so effortless in the way that he can, finish off a rebound that comes off the rim. It's wild. It's uncanny. But is that going to translate to the NBA season? Are the Spurs going to be a problem, one of the contenders with the Wolves in the Western Conference? We'll get into that when we return on the Minnesota Basketball Party. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The sports aren't quite sporting the way we want right now. The Olympics are done. NBA and NHL in the offseason, college football, college basketball in the offseason. We've got WNBA starting back up. We got Major League Baseball. That's about it, but that's okay because with those sports that are going on, FanDuel is giving all customers a booster bonus daily. That's all customers with a daily booster bonus all summer long. Head to FanDuel.com. Check out all the lines, all the leagues, start making the most out of your summer, and check out some of the futures. We're going to get into some cool ones in the NBA later on in this show. And you've also got Major League Baseball Twins going for the sweep this afternoon against the Kansas City Royals. You can bet that at FanDuel.com. They're an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Wemby, year 2. What will it mean for the Spurs, who now have Chris Paul, to supplement that roster, give him a true ball handler? Let's start with Ron and then go Jack, Ben, Reggie. So what are the Spurs going to be this year, coming off, honestly, a pretty terrible year for San Antonio with Wemby as a rookie? Felt like he turned a corner late in the season. They upset the Nuggets in a big game late in the year, which kind of felt like a turning point for that franchise. And now they've got Chris Paul, and now they've got Wemby with this international experience. Are the Wolves going to have to contend with the Spurs now as well in the Western Conference? What do you say?
No. I do think they're going to be a little bit more competitive. I think the whole Popovich getting Chris Paul, like everybody's looking at old videos of Chris Paul and Popovich talking and so on and so forth. I think honestly he's looking for a veteran to kind of get the floor moving. When you look at the ball, sometimes even coming up, Wemby's getting it at the top of the key, and I don't think that's the best use of his skill set. What you saw in that international game with him being able to spread the floor out, be on the wing, pop to the top, kind of like you see with Porzingis, kind of like you see with Joker, where he pops to the top, either sets the pick, gets the ball, and then the offense starts. I think that's what he's hoping for with a Chris Paul. Chris Paul's a floor facilitator. And so, no, I don't think they're going to compete with the Timberwolves, but I do think they're going to be a little bit more competitive because Chris Paul, honestly, as much as we say he disappears in the playoffs, during the regular season, Suns, Rockets, he finds a way to make the team better. And I think that's why so many teams wanted him earlier. We forget Chris Paul was that guy early. Earlier in his career, he was that guy. He just never got over the hump. He never partnered up with the right guys to kind of get the whole wanting to be with LeBron. That never really worked out. The Banana Boat Boys never worked out. He never actually got to get with the guys he wanted to be with. He tried to be on some super teams with James Harden and so on and so forth. But again, came down to injury in the playoffs with the Rockets. If Chris Paul doesn't get hurt, they probably do make it to the finals. I think that's the biggest issue that Chris Paul's always faces late in the season. He's hurt and he's just never able to get it done. Same with the Suns, just couldn't get it done. So for Chris Paul, I think that's the goal, make them better. Wemby is clearly a star, but competing with the Timberwolves long-term, no, not right now.
Yeah, the Western Conference, Jack, is just so tough that the Spurs might be a bit away. I think they take a big step, but when you look at the 15 teams in the West, pretty much almost everybody's trying, and even the teams that aren't, like the Jazz aren't really serious, but they're also not bereft of talent. They've got Lauri Markkanen. So it's going to be hard for the Spurs to really rise in the standings, but I think that they're going to be a problem. There were some games last year where it felt like Wemby was just too young. He couldn't make as much of an impact as he wanted to. He was worn down by the grind of the NBA season. I don't know if that's going to be as much of a problem this year. I think you're going to feel his presence every game.
Yeah, no question about it. I think during the kind of home stretch of the regular season, it was almost kind of like, I don't know if you really remember during that 73-9 Warriors season and the season where Steph Curry won MVP, where there was just it's a Steph Curry night, or it's a Damian Lillard night, where you could just tell they've got 22 points after the first quarter and you've got to find a way to get that game on. I think Wemby watch is becoming really became a real thing down the stretch of last season. And it wasn't the game that they beat the Nuggets in, but it was a game that they almost came back and beat the Nuggets in at home in San Antonio. And Wemby was just absolutely everywhere. His defense shined. He made every single thing tough and was doing everything on the floor for them. And I think he really kind of started to feel that confidence and really start to understand exactly how he can harness all of the superpowers that he has at one time to make sure that, the team's floor is as high as it can possibly be with, a guy with all of his talents leading the way. But I'm with Ron. The Spurs are 22-60 last year, despite Victor Wembanyama having a pretty good case to be, a third team all NBA guy as a rookie. But look, I think Chris Paul is a phenomenal pickup for them, just in terms of not only trying to help aid Wemby's development as a guy that can, really get him the ball anywhere on the floor, whether it's entry passes, catching the ball atop the key or at the nail or in the slot, wherever the case may be. But CP3 is also going to be really important for helping develop number 4 overall pick Stephon Castle, right? As a two-way, kind of combo guard they got from UConn, who I think is going to be a really, really strong two-way player for them, but is just going to need a little bit of time to kind of get comfortable and confident at the NBA level. So I think he'll really help there. And then adding another really, savvy veteran that's seen a ton in his NBA career in Harrison Barnes to help space the floor for Wembanyama will be helpful too. Like I certainly think that the Spurs will be like minimally in the play-in conversation next year. I would be shocked if they didn't make the play-in or compete really, really hard for the play-in. But yeah, I just think, then when you look at, what the Spurs have coming down the pipeline, like Zach Collins becomes an expiring contract next year. Harrison Barnes becomes an expiring contract next year. So they're going to have some options in terms of, how they're going to be able to potentially package some expiring contracts and first round picks down the line to be able to, really start bringing in some star power alongside Wemby to help them kind of jump into that top 4, 5, 6 of the West.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Wemby watch, Jack, and that's the other part of this NBA schedule release, which should be happening in the next few days. Ant is going to be on national TV a lot. So is Wemby. I mean, Wemby watch is going to be very accessible because he's going to be on TV a ton. He's one of the most marketable international stars right now, and he does things that nobody else can do. So we're going to see a lot of this kid who is still an alien. Like I can't fathom. Like there was a play against, I want to say Brazil in their first Olympic game where he was just running through the middle of the lane. No one else on earth could have dunked the ball from the position he did. He just reached out and dunked it from like the middle of the lane. It was absurd. But Ben, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, they'll be better than the Blazers. They'll be better than the Jazz, most likely. I don't know that I would say that I put them that much high. Like they could be better than Houston. They could be better than Sacramento. I like the West is so tough, which we've already identified. And like Jack said, they won just 22 games last year. And Wembanyama was insanely good for a 20-year-old with as little experience as he has professionally. So they're certainly going to be better. I think the fatal over-under for them is 36.5. They're not going to win. I would not take the over on that. I mean, that's really hard to do in the Western Conference. I went back through the last several seasons in the West, and the last time there were not multiple teams with between 20 and 30 wins was like the 17-18 season. I think the Suns won 19 games that year, and then a bunch of teams, everybody else won 33 or more games. We could see a year like that where the floor is raised, but it's just so tough when everybody's beating up on each other in the Western Conference. So I think just somebody's got to be the worst team or the worst 2 or 3 teams. So I think they'll threaten the play-in, but I think it'll be pretty jumbled there from like, if you look at the, if you're looking at like the, I don't know, 8 to 12 range in the Western Conference, like it's probably going to be depending on how healthy Memphis is, depending on how healthy Sacramento is, those guys in Houston, maybe Golden State is in that mix in San Antonio. But jumping from 22 to like anything north of 36 wins would be a huge jump, even accounting for Wemby's improvement, adding Chris Paul, getting Castle. So I don't know. I think they compete for the play-in. But to what everybody else said, they are going to be one of those teams that just randomly beats a good team. And they might be my guess is they're probably a 30-ish win team. There's an idea that, maybe they get into the play-in, but then they randomly beat the Timberwolves or they beat the Nuggets or they beat, the Mavs on a random night in January. Like that's the sort of thing that could happen because they have competency in Chris Paul. They have, superstar all-world upside in Wembanyama. So anything could happen on any given night. I just think the rest of that roster is so thin that it's hard to win at a high level, at a playoff level, especially in the Western Conference right now. So I think I would take the under on 36.5 wins, and I would say they don't make the play-in, but I think they're in the conversation, and it's all about how big of a leap does Wemby make? Can he drag what's otherwise maybe the worst roster? Can he drag them to, the 10th spot in the Western Conference? It's possible. I wouldn't bet on it.
Reggie, here's my vision for you in 2028. You're the Care 11 sports director. Maybe you go to LA. Maybe you cover the basketball tournament in 4 years. You're a pretty tall guy. You've got great hair that makes you even a little taller. I would like a photo of you, Reggie, next to Wemby in 2028, just so we can see the disparity. I think we should set that up.
Yo, that would be crazy. It is interesting when people, talk to me on the street. They're like, "Man, you're tall. How tall are you?" I'm like, "Not as tall as these dudes I interview on a week-to-week basis." Like looking up at Cat, looking up at Rudy. Like it's kind of strange sometimes when you're like normal people tall, but you're not athletic freak tall. But yeah, to answer your question though, Sam, initially, they'll sneak up on a few teams. Like they'll get some wins that maybe, I don't even know that you would say that maybe they shouldn't. I mean, it's the NBA, so they'll beat a few good teams on any given night, but I just don't know, especially now. Like Chris Paul is 39 years old, and to think that he's going to last a full season, he just never does. And then to think that he's going to do it at age 39 is maybe a little ambitious. I did kind of think about it though. It kind of made me think about the year that Chris Paul was in Oklahoma City. Like he really had that team going. And you have him, he had a young Shea that he was kind of bringing along under his wing. And I think that did a lot for Shea's development. Maybe he can bring on, Castle and kind of show him the ropes. I think that's probably one of the best things that Castle could have, other than Pop coaching him, is having a guy like Chris Paul to learn from. But Wemby's going to continue to grow and develop. Like he's going to continue to take what he learned in France during this Olympics and really kind of apply that moving forward and apply pressure. And I can see that. But when you look at the West, man, the Memphis Grizzlies weren't even competitive last year. Ja Morant comes back and they have immediately become more competitive. Whose spot do they take that was in the playoffs, that was in the play-in pool? Like who do they take over for? Like you just have such a gauntlet in the West with all these teams. I saw Chauncey Billups at the airport on Sunday in DC, coming back from moving my sister into law school, and I wanted to be like, "Hey man, good luck this year," because I just don't know, how things are gonna go in Portland for you, my guy. But like it's gonna be tough. Ja Morant said, a few years ago, "I'm good in the West." Man, the West is crazy, man. Like, and you look at all the teams that are going to be jockeying for position in the playoffs, and the Wolves are not going to have an easy path to try to get back to where they were last year and beyond. So to think that, just a year under his belt, he is playing for one of the best coaches of all time, but like they probably still need a couple more pieces and a few more years to gel before, Wemby and squad are a legit contender.
All right. When we return, this is a question that will make some people weep, perhaps, as they listen on their car radios. But I'm going to ask the question: is Naz Reid entering his final year as a Minnesota Timberwolves player? That's next on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Very quick pause. Make sure to check out our full lineup here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. The Minnesota Football Party is live Mondays and Thursdays. The Ron Johnson Show on Tuesdays. He just had on Alvin Jones, the twin brother of Vikings running back Aaron Jones. Very good interview. Check that out on the Ron Johnson Show. And then Ron hosts our roundtable on Fridays. All right, question of the day. Is Naz Reid entering his final year with the Wolves? Here's the contract situation. And Reggie, we're going to start with you on this, then go to Ron, Jack, and Ben. He's got a player option that he could exercise in 2025-26. Now, Naz Reid is probably worth more than $15 million per year. That's what the player option is. If he hits the market, he's making more, unless things go off the rails this season. Is there a path for the Wolves to retain him where he doesn't opt out and they get him back? What do you think, Reggie Wilson? Is Naz Reid possibly in his final year?
Dang, man, cover of Slam magazine and just, the most popular basketball player in the area, even with Anthony Edwards on the team. Like, I just don't I'm interested to see how this season plays out with guys like Cat and Jaden McDaniels. Like, I'm interested to see how that goes, because I just don't think you get rid of a guy or you let a guy walk like Naz Reid, who you've helped develop. He's grown into a good basketball player where he's giving you good minutes on both ends of the floor. He's continuing to grow. I think the playoff performance where he kind of unlocks some things is going to continue to help him grow in his development, being more consistent on a night in and night out basis. And yeah, I don't know, maybe he wants an opportunity to start moving forward. And I don't know if Minnesota gives them that opportunity to do so if they continue to hold on to Cat. But there are decisions that are going to have to be made about this roster. And Naz Reid I would think Naz Reid is one of those building block type players that you can't necessarily let walk. You do what you have to do to retain a guy like that and continue to invest in him, because he has shown that the investment that you made in him is paying off for the basketball team. So I don't know, man. I think Wolves fans would be distraught somehow if he doesn't continue to be on this team. And I just think, you have a young core in place with guys like Ant and Naz and Jaden, and now you bring up the two rooks as well with Shannon and Dillingham. Like, I think you have some core pieces that you can hoop with moving forward. And I don't know, man. You let Naz walk, that there might just be protesters at Target Center.
Ron, at different times, you've also said, I think they should trade Cat. You haven't been thrilled with Rudy, and they've hung on to those two guys. If they continue hanging on to them at Naz's expense, if they can't afford Naz, would you be okay with that?
So, I mean, even hearing nationally, I forgot who it was. I don't know if it was LeBron or somebody, but they were talking about how good Naz Reid was and how people were like really forgetting how much of it was whoever was talking about the 3-on-3, which it doesn't work. Oh, Draymond Green, because it doesn't work. He was trying to say like we could have had guys that aren't in the Olympics play on the 3-on-3 team, but then they were like, somebody was like, if you Googled it, right away it doesn't work because the play-ins and the qualification games are during the NBA season, which I don't know how far they have to travel, where they go, but guys take load management days anyway. You might as well let like one guy, from each of these teams, and it's probably 5 guys total that would have to miss maybe a game or two to go be for their country. I think they would allow that. But they were saying how like people forget Naz Reid is a baller, and Draymond Green was saying that like Naz Reid, he put him on a 3-on-3 team with like I forgot who else he was saying. He said like Ja Morant. I forgot the other guys. So I'm like, yeah, they would kill it in 3-on-3. But with this said, with the way the Timberwolves are set up, honestly, yeah, you can't afford everybody. Do I think this is Naz Reid's last season? No, but I heard Trent Tucker on K-Fan talking about like Rudy Gobert getting hurt, and how much does he have left in the tank? Should the Timberwolves try to find a replacement for Rudy Gobert? I feel like they could find a replacement for Rudy Gobert and they still need to keep Naz Reid. If I had to make a choice long term, I'm probably want Naz Reid over Rudy Gobert. I just think Rudy Gobert doesn't give you a lot of offense. You look at the way the Suns are set up, the Warriors are set up, even the Celtics. Their bigs aren't true like defenders. Now the Nuggets, yeah, they have them in there. The Mavericks, yeah, their bigs are defenders, but you can get away without having one true big defender. Where if you just add a guy, you keep Naz Reid on there. I just would prefer him long term over Rudy because who knows how much he has left.
Jack, I know you'll have a good answer for this. So is it overly simplistic to say that Rudy's money comes off the books after next season and that they could replace that money and give it to Naz? Basically just exchange Rudy for Naz and extend him after the Rudy era. Is that a possibility here?
Yes. But my proposed solution,
okay.
It's funny that this comes right after what Ron was saying. I think the most feasible way that you keep Naz Reid long-term is that you sign Rudy Gobert to a very team-friendly extension that would replace his player option for 25-26. And let's say he gets something like 3 years, $75 million. So next year you would have Rudy Gobert, instead of making $47 million or 46.6, you have him making something like $28 or $27 million or something like that. And then you could get Naz Reid up to $25 million or something like that. And you're still, going to be able to be under the second apron if you play it that way. So at least that's before, you have to fill a few roster spots out here. So you're going to be over the second apron if you keep both of those guys anyways. But I think to me, it's much less about Rudy and much more about Karl, frankly. I think that, I think Rudy's skill set is much more difficult to replace than Karl's is right now, frankly, just because you consider that Naz is much more of a Karl facsimile than he is a Rudy facsimile. And I think when you consider that, Naz Reid's defense has improved as much as it has to a point where he was playing the 3 and playing it pretty darn well last year and being able to move his feet and slide and hang with bigger threes on the perimeter. I just think you really need a guy like that on the team, right? Because now you bring in Rob Dillingham, but before you had Rob Dillingham, Anthony Edwards was really the only guy you could go to who had a mismatch, who would feasibly punish that mismatch every single time. And I think when you consider that you can bring Naz off the bench to do that against second string guys, I think that's really important. But I think the most important thing here that I think can kind of get lost is just the culture element of this. Like, everybody in that locker room would die for Naz Reid. I think almost all of the 20,000 people in Target Center on any given night, when that place is sold out, would die for Naz Reid. And I think, like, just in a vacuum, if a team lost Naz Reid or a team lost Karl-Anthony Towns or a team lost Rudy Gobert, who do you think they'd be the most upset about losing? I guarantee you that the answer would be like the answer for most people would be Naz Reid. And I think the answer for most players would be Naz Reid, just because they love him, they respect his story. And I think you have to keep guys like that around. I mean, like Reg was saying, slam cover and the towels and all that. Like, you can't discount any of that. And I think all that stuff matters. And I think too, like, when you consider that Naz Reid's agent had to fight him to try to go to unrestricted free agency to get him the best offer that he could, just looking out for Naz's best interest. Naz is like, no, man, I want to be here. And so that could open the door potentially for Naz to sign some sort of extension before he reaches unrestricted free agency, if he wants to do that again, because it's so clear how much he loves this place and how much he appreciates and reciprocates the love that he gets from Timberwolves fans. So no, I don't think there's any chance on God's green earth that this is Naz Reid's last year in a Timberwolves uniform. And if I had to bet, I know we're going to get into our FanDuel segment here in a minute, but if I had to bet, I don't think Naz Reid plays for any other franchise in the NBA than the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Wow. In the era of player movement, that is a big take from Jack Borman. I do feel a little better, though. You kind of put my heart at ease a little bit. Ben, what do you got?
Yeah, quickly. I think it is. I think what they're going to try and do is exactly what Jack said first, which is to try and buy out the player option for Rudy Gobert. And Rudy's probably going to be incentivized. He's going to be 33 soon. Get him one last, $25+ million a year deal, give him 3 years. Also, remember all the assets the Timberwolves, I don't want to say sunk isn't the right word, because they're obviously, it's Rudy trade's working no matter how much, whatever you think about the assets they gave up, you're not just going to let him walk in a year anyway. There's also that piece of it, the acquisition cost. So I think they try and buy out the $46+ million for next season, 25-26, extend him to 3+ years. He's extension eligible right now. And I do think, as Jack finished with, I think they try and do that with Naz as well, because same deal. Like, if he opts out next offseason, which I fully expect he would, he's going to get more on the open market, just like he could have this year. Like, a team like the Kings would have paid him more money to go there and be a starter, but he wanted to come back to Minnesota for all the reasons Jack laid out and enjoys being in Minnesota. And obviously that was the right decision. The team went to the conference finals, and Naz was 6th man of the year and on the cover of Slam magazine and all the above. So I think the Timberwolves will do everything they can to keep all 3 of those guys together. And I actually do agree that Cat is the most likely of the 3 of them to, 12 months from now, no longer be on the roster. I think there's a path, if they can work out these extensions the right way, that they can kick this can a little bit further, but that's going to be tough. You're talking about a lot of minimum guys on the roster. So in the next 12 months, I would say it's probably even odds, if not a little bit more likely, that Cat's traded by this time next year. I don't think it happens during the season, of course, unless something terrible happens and this team's below 500 at the trading deadline. But, Cat's the more likely one because Naz will cost a little bit less. Even with an extension, Rudy will certainly cost less. Cat is the most expensive of the three. And to Jack's point, this is a topic maybe for next week, certainly for a future show, the Kevin Durant conversation. It's actually not crazy. That sort of a move next June makes a ton of sense. Durant will have 1 year left on his deal. The salary's lower than Cat's. You then have that coming off the books the following year when Durant's 37 or 38 or whatever he'll be in a couple seasons. Then that comes off the books and you're not in the tax anymore because Cat's gone. You're not paying $60 million for Cat. You're paying whatever you paid for Durant, and then he's on your roster. He at this point is a pretty plug and play stretch four that maybe a year from now isn't quite as impactful defensively as Cat because Cat was really good this year. But you could make it work a year from now with Ant and KD and Rudy on the floor together, and hopefully Rob Dillingham turns into a starting caliber point guard. So that would not shock me one bit if that's what we're talking about next June is a Durant for Karl-Anthony Towns trade. I think that's more likely than them trading Naz Reid. But certainly until an extension is signed for Rudy and Naz Reid, all options are on the table. And I think Rudy's the least likely to be traded because Naz would fetch more in a trade. His salary is going to be easier to match. And Cat would also fetch more in a trade than Rudy Gobert. So I would rank it Cat most likely to be traded, then Naz, and then Rudy.
Interesting. On FanDuel right now, Naz Reid is second in sixth man of the year odds behind Malik Monk, who probably would have won it last year if he'd not gotten hurt. Speaking of FanDuel, I've got 3 lines I'd like you to guess. Now, if you've seen this already, please abstain. But first off, I've got the line on the season opener against Reggie's Lakers at Crypto.com Arena. Guess who's favored and what the line is. Timberwolves at Lakers on October 22nd. Ben, what do you think?
I'm going to go Wolves by 2.
Reggie, Lakers by 20. Is that your guess?
No, it's probably like Wolves by 9 or something.
Okay. Ron, what do you think?
I'm going to go Wolves by 7.5. So 7.
Okay.
Or 7.5 is the line, probably.
I'm going to go Lakers by 1.
Jack is the closest. Timberwolves by 1.
Wow.
They're thinking this is going to be an even
closer by 1.
An even basketball match. What did you say, Ben?
I said Wolves by 2.
Ben, I apologize. Ben was closer.
Sam doesn't know integers. He didn't realize.
I was just happy to beat Jack in something betting related.
Okay. Secondly, maybe you've seen this already. If you have, please abstain. Regular season win projection for the Timberwolves. Reggie, have you seen it yet?
I have not.
What do you think?
I'll go 55.
Okay, Ron.
Sorry, what is it?
Regular season win projection. How many wins?
For the Timberwolves, let's say 56.
What'd they have last year?
What is this?
57?
Price is Right, Ron? You won one more than me.
They won 56 last year.
They won 56 last year. Okay. All right, Jack.
52.5.
Okay.
I saw it. Or I already looked at it.
All right.
I will.
Well, if Jack claiming to not have seen it nails it on the nose, 52.5, right on the money. Okay. Would you bet now going back around the circle? Would you bet over under the 52.5, Reggie?
Over.
You said 55, so why not? Why not go over?
Exactly.
Ron, same answer.
Over. Yeah.
So Jack's the one we really need to ask because he guessed it on the nose. So would you go over under?
I would go over. I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns missed 6 weeks last season. They still won 56 games. So
fair.
I would go over. And I think this team's better than last year's team.
Yeah, I'd go over. I think I said I was on a show the other day, and this isn't like my final official win projection because we still got some weeks left, but I had them at 55 wins this year, which I know is one less than last year. But besides the Cat injury, they had pretty good fortune in terms of injuries, and we'll see how the bench shakes out with the young guys. So I have them. I certainly would take the over on 52.5.
And the West is going to be healthier and better.
Yeah. It's going to be tough to win. But I also was asked, what's the best case? I think this team could push 60 wins. I think the most likely scenario is mid-50s, give or take, around 55.
Last one. Who does FanDuel have winning the division between the Thunder, Wolves, and Nuggets? It's going to be loaded, and it's going to be a battle just like it was last year. Ron, who do you think they have winning the division?
I think they got the Nuggets.
Jack?
Of course they have the Thunder.
Yeah, it's got to be OKC.
Come on.
Thunder.
Yep. Alex Caruso. The correct answer is the Thunder.
Please do literally anything in the playoffs and then talk to me.
Our resident Thunder
They annoy
antagonist.
Jack so much.
How did Canada do in the Olympics, by the way? Did they massively
Oh
underperform?
man.
Did Jamal Murray and SGA both underperform? Because I think they did.
Interestingly, they have the Timberwolves second in the Northwest odds, but they have the Nuggets a little higher in the overall Western Conference race because they think the Nuggets are a better playoff team, I guess, even though the Wolves beat them. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Arbitrage for you, Sam.
We love FanDuel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the Minnesota Basketball Party. We'll be back next week where I think we'll have a schedule to break down on the Minnesota Basketball Party, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Jack Borman, Ben Beecken, Reggie Wilson, Ron Johnson, I'm Sam Ekstrom. The full crew today coming at you with some Wolves talk. See you next week.